This video will be on how to make your own relay panel. If you don't feel like spending a couple $100 on one of them fancy pre-made ones, you can make your own just how you want it for a quarter of the price. Alright, as you can tell, I've actually already got started putting some of the wires in, but I'm going to break it down for you guys. Let you know kind of basically what you're going to need if you're going to make your own relay board. Give you a couple tips on how I like to make mine and what each part is. So first, you're going to need obviously relays. You can get 4-pin or you can get 5-pin. I'll show you in a little bit how to take the center pin out because you won't need that if you're using it on most of the things that'll be on your car. The second thing that you'll need is you'll need a fuse box or fuse board. This is going to make it a little bit easier so you don't have to put an inline fuse every single place that you run electricity to keep everything safe. Next, I like using some terminal blocks. This just makes it where it's easy. Quick connect right there to whatever you're running power to. Quick connect your switch on this side. Some of the tools that you're going to need is first you're going to need some wire cutters. You can use anything. These are just Harbor Freight. You can pick them up for like $3-4, maybe even cheaper than that sometimes. The next thing you're going to use is some wire strippers. I like these because they kind of mount. They just form to whatever size wire that I'm using and do pretty good. And lastly, either a crimping tool itself, or you can just use a pair of old pliers like I do, as long as you make sure you get a good tight crimp on there and you're not bending the wires up too much so they get brittle. Couple other things just to keep things nice and tidy. Some people will use different terminal ends. I like to use ring ends because they can't wobble off, and I like to use bare ring ends. The reason I do that instead of using the plastic ones, I find some guys, they're fine with using them. I think they're a little bit cheaper, and this also just gives a lot better seal. It's heat shrink. You can get 3-to-1, which means whatever size it is, it'll shrink down 3 times that. So 1/3 of the size, that's what this thing can shrink down to. Or it can go on a bigger wire. If you can fit it in there, it'll still seal up. It's heat shrink, so you gotta have heat. I use just a simple heat gun. You can get ones that are adjustable, different settings and stuff like that, or one that's just a normal 1 setting system. If you do, I normally use a rule of thumb of staying about 4 to 6 inches away from the wire and applying heat. I'll show you how I do that. So real quick before I got started, I just wanted to talk about a relay. Most relays, I'd say the most common is a 5-pin relay, and this one has kind of the same colors. It makes it, I guess, simpler. I like to have multicolors just to keep things kind of organized, but I'll show you basically the diagram. I'll also put a picture right here of what a relay diagram actually is. So a lot of times you can actually look either on the side or top. They will actually put a diagram. It's kind of hard to see this one because it's just a plastic engraving, but you're going to see a couple numbers on there. First, you're going to see 30. 30, because it's the only one that starts with a 3, I always just remember that's where I get my heat. That's where I get my electricity from. 30 is going to run straight to your battery. And so on our relay board, you'll notice that the only wire that I don't have hooked up yet is actually this yellow wire. This yellow wire is going to be the wire that runs to the actual source of 12 volts, and that's going to be your fuse blocks. These terminals right here, you'll have 12 volts running right here from a good size wire. I like to use something good like gauge 4 welding wire. You can really use whatever is going to support your system, but I think gauge 4 welding wire is going to pretty much cover anything on a car's chassis wiring. Each one of these terminals can supply 12 volts. Each one of them you'll be able to put a fuse inside of it. And like I said, 30 is where we're taking that power from. So where we take that power from, we want to make sure there's a fuse there in case there's ever some type of short circuit. The fuse will pop instead of popping the thing that we're powering. The next number you'll see is going to be 86. 86 is going to be your trigger. Now, what I mean by your trigger is the switch to turn on or off whatever you're trying to power. What I do is, that's actually my white wire in this case. The white wire runs over to one of these bus bars, gives me the ability to run a switch inside the cockpit somewhere, or wherever you want your switch to be. run it right here with another ring inlet. It's easily able to be put on there or taken off if you ever need to change something or work on it. Third is going to be your ground. That's normally going to be your black wire. It can be other colors sometimes, but most of the time you're going to see it being black in this case. And something to mention is, if you ever get confused about the numbers, the switch is going to be right across from ground. So when you look at it, ground is over here. 9 times out of 10 it's going to be a black wire, but it's going to be number 85, and then 86 is going to be your switch right across from each other. As far as the bottom, when you're looking at it, you're going to have 30. Like I said, we've already talked about that. That is your power. Another easy way to remember, okay, where's my power going? Right across from it, that's where your power goes to. I'll talk about that wire next. The next number, and really the final number that most of the time you're going to really use, is 86. 86 is where you send power to. So if you're powering a headlight, 86, the wire is going to come over to here. The blue wire in this case is 86. It will get power from 30, which is our yellow wire, and comes to the fuse block itself, and it will send power out 86. Now there is one more wire, and that wire will always be dead center. Like I said, if you've got a 5-pin relay, there will be one more wire in the center. That is 86A. An easy way to remember why this is not the wire that you use all the time is it's the only number that also has a letter with it, 86A. Now, the reason that we most of the time don't use 86A is 86A gives constant power. That means from the moment that power is given to the fuse blocks, from you turning a key on or just it being contacted to 12 volt power, it's going to send 12 volt power to 86A. Now, once you hit the switch, flip the switch, it's going to take that power from 86A and it's going to give it to 86. So in some scenarios, you might actually use that. In any case, I don't most of the time use the 86A. I only have need for the 4 of the wires. One of the things, just in case you like to keep things organized, make it easy for you to work on later like me, is how you're going to lay your wires. Lay your wires out in a fashion that they're easy to follow. For instance, because the wires have to go from all the way over here to over here, I take the wire farthest and I put it at the first one. That's the shortest distance. It's the longest distance it has to go, but that's the shortest distance it can go and still get power to one of the terminal blocks. And then I just go from there, as you can see. The next one goes to the second terminal down, third one goes to third terminal down, fourth one goes to fourth terminal down, and so on, fifth, sixth, seventh. And a lot of times when you get these guys, these little terminals, they come with a cover with nifty little numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you can actually get little labels, put them on there just to give you an idea of exactly what each relay and each block is for. That'll help you with troubleshooting whenever you have to work on it later. I lay my wires, basically the first wire, the farthest wire, I'm gonna lay that as low as I can. The next wire will go on top of it, basically layering each other, just so that everything routes pretty easy and it looks nice too. So one thing I'll do is I'm about to heat shrink one of the wires that go to the switch terminal, and each time I'm gonna put a wire, I'm gonna cut it. The thing is, you can always cut more wire off. You can't put more wire on without having to put heat shrink and other different connections. Nobody wants to do that, especially if you're spending time to make it look nice like this. So you'll run your wire over, and I just kind of give myself an idea real quick of how long is this wire going to be. Now, you're going to have your terminal. The ring end is going to go on the end of the wire. And so you got a little bit of space there. So think about that. You don't want to push your wires around too much. I'm normally going to go right up to the edge, right up to the edge of it, because that will give me enough space to be able to put it right about there. And we will snip the wire. Next thing you do once you got your wire cut to length, I double check it, take a good look at it. Looks like, hey, that's where I want it. You're gonna get your wire. With these type of crimpers, all you do is this goes in. The left side, when you're looking at it, is gonna grab the back of the wire. Front side just crimps down until it gets to metal, so it cuts right through the rubber, and then it pulls the sheath off, just like so. Sometimes you'll see people shove tons and tons of wire, or tons of the rubber off of the wire itself, and they'll have pieces of that wire sticking out this end sometimes, or even on this end. You only really want to have as much wire as you need to have exposed. No need to have anything, no need to cut any more rubber off than you don't need to. Now, I feel like anybody who's ever done wiring has at least done this once. You put your terminal on there, you're like, hey, I'm ready to go ahead and crimp this guy up, put it on there, good to go. Make it a habit of, before you put this guy on, you think about heat shrink. Now, I'm gonna talk about heat shrink just for a second. I mentioned it earlier. Heat shrink, the thing about heat shrink is different than a regular plastic terminal. And I'll grab a plastic terminal real quick. Okay, so I grabbed a ring end terminal. And the thing about these guys, they do work. It's just this plastic is brittle and it is hard. It does two things. It will crimp down, but it doesn't really cover all of the wiring sometimes. And the second thing is it doesn't actually put a watertight seal around the wire. I like to have a seal on there. I don't want it getting in there rusting. I don't want anything like that happening. It also just helps with saving a little bit of space. These things, they crimp, they get all sideways, flat. The other thing that can happen that I've seen before is because they are a lot harder and brittle, instead of being flexible and rubber, if you have this on the end of your wire and your wire bends like so, it has actually, I've seen where it will break the copper wire because it's against that hard edge. Last thing that you want to do, we all know cars have vibration when you're going down the road and everything, is have something go out because you chose to use a plastic terminal versus just using some heat shrink. I'm going to show you guys how to use your heat shrink. Oops. I'm going to show you how to use it real quick. I'm not going to be putting red on this per se. I've been using black for everything, but I'm going to heat shrink one of these real quick, and this is how you do it. Okay, so got myself my little piece of heat shrink. They come a little bit longer, about double that size, but I don't really need to put any more on there than you need. And what we need is enough to cover the metal part of the terminal and any bit of wire that may be exposed. Now I've only, like I said, cut off a little bit of the rubber, so it won't be as big of a concern, but I'll show you what I do. So you take your heat shrink, slide that guy on there. So you can fall down, it doesn't matter. Pop the end of it on there. Now you want to be careful not to push it too far back. You push it too far back onto the rubber and the metal itself is not making contact to the wire. This is key. It has to be touching the metal, not the rubber. Sometimes you can get it half on, half off. It's going to make a good crimp on the rubber, not so much on the metal. So that's one of the other reasons why I only do so much metal out. You can see it's barely coming out of the tip right there. What you'll do next, take your trusty pliers or a crimping tool, and you squeeze down. And I normally take, once I get that guy kind of in there, and I squeeze down a little bit more. Now, You can pull on it, you can feel, hey, this isn't going anywhere, okay? Next step is you're gonna put your heat shrink on there. I'm gonna give it one more crimp sideways so it's easier for the heat shrink to grab on. There we go. Still very tight. Now you slide this up and over. Like I said, it's covering the terminal end itself and also the wire all the way down to rubber again. And then like I said, I'm gonna keep about 3 inches to 6 inches. And I start at the edge, the very tip of it. The reason I do that is it makes it where that end of the rubber kind of forms around that end, and it makes it where it can't drop down. So it stays in place while I heat the rest of it up. And I'm just keeping motion. I don't want to keep it in one spot. If you do that, it's going to start melting it. But you want to keep 3 inches to 6 inches and just keep moving. About 5 to 10 seconds, depending on how close you are and what heat range will normally do it. You'll be able to look at it and tell, hey, this thing has shrunk down quite a bit. In comparison, you can see the width here versus here. This is why it's called heat shrink. Heat makes it shrink. All right, so you've got your wire cut to size, you've got your terminal end put on there, you got your heat shrink put on there, so everything's nice and sealed up. Now you're going to route your wire. Now, like I said, I put my wires layered on top of each other. Closest will go on top, farthest will go down low. Now, I'll move this over just a little bit so you can see the wire that I'm going to be working with is this one. It's going to go on top of the wire that was before it. So I'm going to route this over. Each one of these terminals has a little Phillips head screw. If you get a different brand, it might have a flat head screw. But you're going to find yourself a trusty little screwdriver. Oops. Screwdriver. You'll loosen that bolt up. I already got mine pre-loosened. And has a little square washer, if you will, to hold this down. It's gonna hold that terminal right in place. I'll give the wire a little bit of assistance to help it route. Push it down a little bit sometimes and get it where I want it to be, because once you tighten this down, it's gonna kind of hold the metal part at least, which is gonna help keep the wire in place. All right, once you get done routing each one of the wires, as you know, we have 4 wires that we routed. We have on this side our terminals for the power going to the object that we're powering. For instance, a headlight, we're gonna wire the wire that comes from the headlight for power to here. On this side, we have our switch. That coming from the fuse is coming right here, and we'll have a switch inside of the cabin of the car. This is going to be to turn on the headlight. Then, like I said, you have your ground, obviously. This goes to our blocks up top right here. Being that it's ground, it really doesn't matter which one it goes to. They're all connected anyways. And lastly, we have our 30, our power. This is where we're getting our power from. That's why it goes to the fuses, to protect the whole circuit, okay? Once you get done, this is basic chassis wiring for a car if you were starting from scratch. I've got 5 here for my brake lights, left turn signal, right turn signal, my running lights, and headlights. You can add other things. I'm going to add some more on this side coming down here. Things like my water pump, I might run the fuel pump off of it. The fans will be ran off of it. You can put inside lights on this as well. Now, I might do a segment later about the difference between clean and dirty power. Just in case I didn't cover it, this again is where all your power will be coming in. This is where your ground will be coming in. And besides that, that's pretty much how you get your relay board wired up. If you have any questions, drop it down in the comment. And thank you for watching.